case-based guide to understanding and preventing internal control risks.
Hi everyone, I'm Team Leader Park, and I'll be walking you through this training called Case-Based Easy to Understand Internal Control, Risks, and Prevention. Internal control can sometimes feel a bit dry or difficult to understand, especially in more advanced training. That's why in this course, we'll focus on real-life cases where internal control actually failed. We'll take a closer look at what kind of risks occurred in each case, what caused those risks, and most importantly, what we can do to prevent them in the future by strengthening our internal controls. Let's get started. In part 1 of Case-Based Easy to Understand Internal Control, Risks, and Prevention, we'll look at a real incident that occurred at a district council. Despite having clearly defined qualification requirements, a candidate who did not meet those requirements was allowed to pass the document screening stage and was eventually hired. This case was later discovered and flagged as a failure of internal control in the hiring process. Let's take a closer look at what happened and what risk factors led to this failure. Barrow, please show us the video.
The eligibility criteria are as follows. Candidates must have at least 1 year of practical experience in the relevant field after obtaining a bachelor's degree in that field. Only experience in positions with clear responsibilities at the level of a designated officer or higher will be recognized as valid experience in the field. Clerical support, administrative assistance, research assistance, or simple labor will not be recognized.
Officer, Jian Yong, it was tough last year too because there were so many applicants. With this many people applying, how are just the 3 of us supposed to go through all their experience requirements? Oh? Na Juan worked as an intern at a National Assembly member's office for 10 months. Does an intern count as a position with clear responsibilities at the officer level?
Na Juan also worked as an administrative assistant at the National Assembly for 9 months. If we count that experience too, it adds up to over a year. This is just the document screening stage. No need to overthink it. Let's pass him for now and make the final decision during the interview.
Na Juan has a really good impression. I'm sure the eligibility was already checked during the document screening. Let's go ahead and pass him.
Manager Park, did you see the recent case regarding the district council's hiring process?
Yes, I did. An applicant who did not meet the eligibility criteria passed the document screening and was ultimately hired. That's a serious issue from an HR internal control perspective.
Exactly. This case is a textbook example of a control failure where clear eligibility criteria existed, but the screening committee subjectively interpreted and loosened them.
The job posting clearly stated that experience in clerical support, administrative assistance, or simple labor would not be recognized. However, the committee applied the standard loosely, citing a desire to give more candidates an interview opportunity. This is a serious control deficiency that can compromise fairness.
Indeed. Allowing an ineligible applicant to pass the document screening and ultimately be hired is a critical failure that can undermine trust in public sector HR management. Shall we analyze the major risk factors in this case?
Yes. The first and most evident is the failure to adhere to qualification screening standards. Even though the job posting clearly stated that certain types of experience would not be accepted, the committee subjectively interpreted the criteria and allowed an ineligible applicant to pass. This undermined the integrity of the screening process.
Correct. There's also a risk of informal criteria being applied during deliberation. The committee agreed to loosen standards to increase the number of interviewees, which undermines objectivity and fairness. Moreover, it seems there was no multi-tiered verification process or independent review function in the internal control system.
Another risk factor was the misjudgment or insufficiency of supporting documents. Despite the work certificate stating administrative support staff, the committee failed to consider the actual nature of the duties and wrongly judged the applicant as qualified.
This also points to a failure in insider control mechanisms. Even though external members were part of the screening committee, the internal staff led the process, resulting in inconsistent standards. There were also no effective checks from the department in charge or any appeals procedure.
I think we've now identified the key risk factors. Let's discuss what kinds of internal control measures would be effective in preventing such issues.
Let me start. In this case, I believe a dual qualification screening system is necessary. In addition to the initial screening by experts, a second review team composed of HR personnel and external auditors should verify eligibility. Where experience is ambiguous, we also need standardized guidelines and clear exceptions criteria to ensure consistent interpretation.
We should also strengthen the requirements for work experience certificates. All such documents should be required to include employment period, position, job description, employment type, and official seal of the issuer. If any of these are missing, the experience should be deemed invalid.
We also need to enhance training and declaration requirements for screening committee members. Before their appointment, members should receive training on the job posting standards and be required to sign a declaration acknowledging penalties for non-compliance.
To improve transparency, we should digitally record meeting minutes and individual evaluation sheets and ensure that the audit department reviews them periodically. Furthermore, internal audits should randomly review a portion of the recruitment results after the process ends and report any unreasonable decisions to the HR committee for corrective action.
Well said. To summarize, allowing an ineligible applicant to pass in the district council's hiring process represents a serious breach of the principle that public sector hiring should be transparent and fair. Disregarding the clear standard that clerical or administrative support roles are ineligible shows failure not only in individual responsibility, but also in the control systems. This case demonstrates the urgent need for improvements in the overall recruitment control framework. The most critical areas for enhancement are ensuring consistency in interpretation of eligibility standards, strengthening committee members' adherence and accountability, introducing independent review and post hoc audit mechanisms within the recruitment process. Only by implementing such internal control measures effectively can we enhance the fairness and credibility of public sector recruitment.
In this case, we explored how internal control failures can occur during the hiring process at a district council and how such issues can be prevented. Some of the main risk factors behind the control failure included failure to follow qualification review standards, use of unofficial criteria, lack of or misjudgment in verifying qualifications, breakdown of controls due to internal or biased evaluation. To prevent these kinds of problems, organizations should implement measures such as a dual verification system for applicant qualifications, stricter requirements for submitting proof of career experience, training and oath-based accountability systems for evaluators, transparent record-keeping of the entire review process. Above all, ensuring fairness and transparency in recruitment requires that internal controls are not just in place, but actually function. And that means every member involved in the process must make a conscious effort to strictly follow the control standards. We hope today's session helps your organization make recruitment practices more fair and transparent and apply evaluation criteria more consistently. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.